They say Africa does not have history, does not have documented history. Is this actually true? I am Joana. I uncover Africa's untold stories and help you heal through storytelling. So in this session, we are going to quickly explore what history actually is. Is it only pen and paper? Because what would you call the griots' memory? What would you call the masquerades? What would you call the spiritual leaders' chants? What would you call dance? What would you call the bronze plaques of the Benin Empire? What would you call all these artifacts? Is that not a history? So we don't have documentation or memory, or must it be pen and paper? So what is history? History is basically studying, recording, and documenting the events of the past. So the way people live their life, the way societies were shaped, built, the way it influences today's world, that's history. History is not just dates and kings. No, history is memory. It is identity. It is power. It is what society chooses to remember and what society chooses to forget. So have we chosen to remember heroes, domination, and conquest, and chosen to forget values and experiences that shift us towards peace? For years, we have been told the story that only the things that are written with paper and ink, that you can read in an archive, in a library, that is what is history. That is the valid history, because it is documented in that format. Because paper and ink, digital format, writing with the hand, these are just formats using mediums to record or document experience. There are so many other formats that we are ignorant about. Oral tradition, the griots, their singing, their memories, the chants of the priests or the spiritual leaders, the storytellers, the court jesters. What about art and symbol? For example, the bronze plaques, the petroglyphs, textiles. I have adire, is a Yoruba word, is a kind of textile. I have adire fabrics with specific pattern that is language that communicates something. What about that? Rituals, performances. So what about the masquerades, the reenactments, the festivals, then landscapes, monuments? So what about the pyramids, the sacred grooves? Or are we talking about language, dance, shrines? So there's so many different formats and mediums to record memory. So why have we only validated pen and paper archives as the major form of documenting history? And what that has done to our global society, collective as humans, is these histories are kept in a library somewhere that you and I don't get access to. So what happens is only specific people that can access this old memory prepares it for us. So we derive the story of who we are, not based on the closest remembrance to that memory. We derive it based on filtered perspective, subjective perspectives in between. So this historian has access to it, interprets it, gives it to someone to publish. They interpret it, you receive it, and then you make your interpretation of who you are. So what about embracing what we have in our value system of documenting and recording memory? What about looking into that and seeing how we can revive these cultures of dance, of storytelling, of oral traditions, of festivals, of masquerades, of shrine, of rituals? What about reviving that to make it accessible now to the modern times? I get when people say that no, some are sacred and we should not expose it. But well, if visitors tell your story, you are going to be the haunted, because it's going to be misunderstood. Take the Benin bronze, for example. Every single bronze was the king, the Oba, would order for these bronze to be made by specific guilds that were experts in crafting the story into those bronze. So that's a memory of that time. That's memory of the experiences and the activities happening at that time. Now, someone living in England that goes to a museum and see that bronze, they see art at the highest, craft. That's what they see. They admire the idea of, oh, people did this. But that piece of history, of memory, of artistry has more value to the people and the cultures that created it. So take, for example, oral history. Many indigenous societies have relied on oral history over centuries over. And oral history actually flourished because they were people, custodians of this history. They were people whose responsibility it was to pass on this history as accurate as could be. Will it be subjective? Yes. But would also pen and paper be subjective? Yes. For example, the Ifa priest, for you to become an Ifa priest, then you needed to memorize hundreds of scriptures. So this was no casual memory. This was cognitive memory that was being safeguarded based on the place you live, the food you eat, the way you live your life, healthy, wholesome well-being. So when we lose these methods of history, we actually lose so many human values around our whole being and well-being. Now you don't need to remember anything. So it's not either or. Oh, now you must do only oral history and don't do pen and paper. No, you can't do both. But both are valid as well. So beyond words, you had performances, you had dance. And you know what that does? That makes history part of your living. It's not something external that you or download into an archive and probably not really accessible, but it's dance where people participate in the recording of that memory. It's dance when you do it, like a specific traditional dance, you record recall that memory. So it's an active guide in society, shaping the values, shaping that togetherness. So history is beyond just the past. You can continuously call on that memory to make you heal, to make you whole, to make your identity stronger. So that is why it's so important to expand our understanding of what history is, why is it necessary, how can we take it forward to the 21st century and beyond. So the question is not, did Africa have history? It's not documented. No, it is very much alive. The question is, are we capable, are we open, willing to broaden our understanding of what documentation is, and do we have the abilities now to relieve these documentations and make them accessible to a wider audience? In another video, I'm going to explore a bit more on why history is important and more in the global context. So thank you for staying with me in this session. I am Joana. I'll uncover Africa's untold stories and find ways of healing through storytelling.